Airbnb hosts are going out of business again and again and again. It seems that there's always something, right? In the past 8 years of me hosting on Airbnb, within the last 5, there's always been an event or circumstance that's causing hosts to go out of business. This actually makes a lot of sense. If you followed Airbnb at all since 2011, you understand that there's this golden era before 2015 where almost nobody was hosting, so you were sure to make money for a long time. Right before COVID, I would presume, is about the time where supply got to be large enough that there's no longer just a guarantee that everybody would make money hand over fist, because there was enough hosts to have what we would consider to be a competitive market. And naturally, since then, people have been going out of business left and right for various reasons, which we're going to cover here in this video. But why is it that some super smart hotshot real estate guys get involved in Airbnb and then get their butts kicked, but otherwise some very normal and modest people, probably also watching this video as we speak, have been doing Airbnb for more than 10 years without a problem? They don't have tons of properties, their properties aren't in any way necessarily special, they're just doing it right because they get it. And the little people keep winning, and some of the biggest names in the industry are getting hammered. Everyone from Stay Alfred to Vacasa to Evolve. Even Saunders had some serious issues since they went public at over $1.8 billion. Their stock isn't doing so good right now. Combine that with all the doom and gloom on the internet over the last year. Shelby Church has been losing money on her property, doesn't recommend that you Airbnb. Reventure Consulting says be prepared for a mass sell-off of houses because revenues are down as much as 50% arguably in his data. And in Facebook groups all over the country, we've got people selling off their furniture. Please take my furniture because I want out of this race. So why? Why do some people fail and some people succeed in Airbnb? This video might save you. If you've got a troubled property and you're looking for solutions, or if you're a hotshot real estate guy without too much ego to change his ways, maybe this video might be the beginning of that change for you. And if you've been looking to get into this industry but have been a little bit nervous, hopefully this video can add some clarity onto what your decision might be over the next 6 months. My name is Sean Rakicic, influencer and educator for more than 6 years here on YouTube. Been doing Airbnb for 8. And this is my 4th successful business, so I'm gonna pull on some other stuff that can help you Airbnb guys out. Let's go. Welcome back, YouTube world. Yeah, times are crazy right now. Summer of 2023, there's just always boom and bust and boom and bust. And you're going to have hosts that are saying, we're making money hand over fist. And then right next to them, somebody's like, help, we're drowning. The market's volatile. And that is the nature of the industry. And that's the first thing I think we should cover. Airbnb is a low barrier to entry business because it's peer-to-peer. There's a lot of ways that you can make money in a peer-to-peer space. Like my camera that I'm shooting on right now, I could put it online on something called like Borrow Lenses, I think, and somebody could rent my camera by the hour. My penthouse here, I've rented it out on PEERSPACE, and people have done photo shoots, video shoots, they've hosted events. That's happened before. Same as my last penthouse. Those were actually really profitable, sometimes as much as $4,000 a day on PEERSPACE. That's another peer-to-peer. Turo, T-U-R-O, you can rent out your car. You guys are familiar with a lot of this stuff. And peer-to-peer means all you have to do is have the supply, and you can find a market for the demand. So now, in a world that is competitive instead of early, times are changing, aren't they? The barrier to entry is no longer whether or not you can get your hands on a property. As you guys know, the hundreds of properties that I've put on Airbnb, none of them have ever been owned. I don't own a single one, except for the bus that I'm converting to an Airbnb, which I'm excited to show you over some time. That means you don't need a lot of money to get into the space. You don't need to have a mortgage. You don't need to put that much skin in the game. You can get into the space. That has never been really the issue, has it? So now in a world where there's a lot of properties and professional operators with thousands of them, and some people who do just like me, thousands of doors all rented, the new barrier to entry is competency, which requires some education, some practice, some experience. Here are a few areas of competency that will absolutely make you more competitive than your competition, just like that. And you'll be the one that stays in business while everyone else goes out of business. Cash competency. This is not just an Airbnb one, guys, this is business. I learned this one while I was homeless. 2009, I was homeless and then started living with a girlfriend who was an accountant for a company called Gorman Uniform. She was making like $90,000 a year back in 2009. She had a lot of ego. She definitely thought she was cooler than me, and I went with it because I was homeless and needed a place to stay. That was my life back then, guys. The entrepreneurship professor was an ex-oil guy who had a master's in accounting. He started a company called Slab Gasket, and now he's teaching entrepreneurship. And he did a whole semester in cash. So while I was sneaking into these entrepreneurship courses because my girlfriend was taking them and I came along, I learned about rule number 1 of cash, which is never run out of cash. And his whole entire semester was taught around that concept. Different ways that you can acquire debt, different ways that you can sell off your products to create cash liquidity, different methods in which to just protect your cash. And it was huge. This one area is where a lot of hosts are starting to get squeezed out. If you run out of cash, you run out of options. As long as you have cash as a business, you can get creative. So now, as you see in these Facebook groups, people are selling off their furniture because they are out of cash liquidity and they've got no other moves to make. Now, this market is kind of volatile. I'd say every 3 or 4 years, we have a significant bust cycle where a lot of people get washed out. And then there's a period of less supply, which makes it easier for us. And then the getting gets good again. But the nature of this peer-to-peer industry and social media makes it so that way, when the market is good, people rush in. Fools will rush in without any experience at all, and they will flood the market with supply. They will surely lose, but in the meantime, the collateral damage is the entire host pool makes less money per property. And that's why everyone right now on the internet is talking about revenue per available listing, right? Or per available room, which is the old hotel metric. Hotels would use something called RevPAR. People are now doing something called RevPAL because they think that that is somehow significant. But if you think about it, a 4-bedroom house should make way more revenue than a studio. So I think RevPAR still matters. You need to be factoring in your house as a 4-room listing instead of just comparing it apples to apples from studios to 4 bedrooms. So RevPAR, yes, still use it. And if you want to understand this stuff better, I have a free Facebook group called The Hosts of Airbnb Automated. It's so full of value that there are influencers, people like me on the internet, who teach Airbnb and charge $10,000 for their courses. And when I removed them from my free group because they could try to sell students in my group, they're like, please, can you not remove me? I get so much value from this group. I promise not to sell anybody. Can I please still be here? So if $1 million earners are getting answers in my free group, I promise you that you can get some answers too. Because there's more to learn than just cash competency. Next will be a little complex, but it's industry competency. And industry competency includes understanding the guest and understanding the product and understanding how they fit together and how you service those guests. Okay, so you have a property and there's some guests who stay and they pay. Very simple, right? But there are so many different types of guests. And on my TikTok account, I've got this viral video of people saying why they will never use Airbnb ever again. And a lot of times these guests feel misunderstood. They'll book a product, they don't get what they want, they don't get serviced accordingly, and then Airbnb as a whole loses that customer because there just wasn't a good product customer fit there in a way. So if you have a property in an area that's good for families, you should be setting up your property to also be good for families, because when a family has a need for a home, they'll probably book your place because you're in the right area. Location will trump your design style, for example, right? So location is more important than your interior design. But then that guest experience will rely upon your interior design and your amenities. Did that sound complex? Okay, a guest will pick your place because they need it. And they will have faith that they'll have a generally good experience, and then you have to deliver on the back end sometimes. Sometimes a guest will pick your place because it's perfect for them, and that's what we really want. If you know that you're near Disney World or Disneyland, you're going to furnish your place accordingly to appeal to the Disneyland crowd. But if your property is near the medical center in Houston, or if it's near the American Airlines Center here in Dallas, or if it's near OSU, just up a high street in Columbus, Ohio, your products will all look different, right? Downtown Nashville, for example, is going to be different than downtown Dallas. And there will be 2 different types of booking behaviors for almost all of these properties, right? There's going to be low demand markets where your product is the right fit for a customer and you get booked because you're the right fit in a market with low demand. You really want to work towards this product market fit. And then there will be times of high demand that even if your product isn't the right fit, you could still get booked because you're good enough or sufficient enough or close enough. Understanding your market and your consumer types and what consumer types are underserviced will allow you to modify your property to best suit the needs of the people who are not getting their needs met in a really awesome way. And that'll make you a lot more money. You won't even have to change your prices to get booked anymore because you'll be the only product that fits the market. Hypothetically, if you want to learn more about this, market research, identifying the right types of customers, identifying gaps in a market, I'm hosting a webinar called Gap Market Research. It's going to be the best of all my market research techniques, including my newest research techniques that are dependent on the summer release that just happened. Airbnb made a change to the software that allows us to do some crazy market research stuff never before possible on Airbnb until just a couple months ago. And it is so powerful that you'll never need to pay for AirDNA, Mash Advisor, all the rooms ever again. You'll never need a paid subscription in any city, anywhere. It's that amazing. So there will be a link in the description, maybe a QR code here. Attend Gap if you want to learn how to do market research, so that way you can modify your product or make sure that your next product is perfect for your environment. The third competency is not going to be new to you fans of this channel. You guys heard it a lot. Revenue management, market dynamics, understanding how supply and demand works, and understanding that a product that can be $1,000 today could be $200 tomorrow. God forbid, it can still happen because market forces are at play. So this is also one of those basic business principles that if you understand the concept of supply and demand and market forces and how dynamic markets can work like this, you can take the same things that you learn here and you can apply them to something like Turo. I have students that do Turo and I coach them on how to optimize their revenue on their cars, because what I teach on Airbnb is not so far from how Turo works too, believe it or not. The last competency is more of a bias, and this one has been super controversial. Real estate people kind of hate me for talking about it, but it's the truth, which is the understanding that this is not an investment, this is a business. When you start looking at the Airbnb industry through the lens of an investment strategy, your bias will start to try to automate or oversimplify this stuff way too quickly, way too soon, with the hopes of getting a check in the mail every month, much like a long-term rental strategy. And that's just not possible while maintaining a competitive cost structure, being cost efficient enough to survive down market. In a down market where product prices drop, let's say a normal home that charges $500 a night has to weather a $300 per night environment for even up to a year in order to stay in business, that $200 a night went somewhere, right? And so if your margins weren't 50% profit, dropping from 5 to 3, all of your profits are gone. And there are houses that clear that, right? For every $500 they generate, they only have $150 in cost. There's properties that do that. But what happens is in a world where you have a co-host, which is how you pacify an Airbnb investment, you're paying about 20 to 25% of that to a co-host typically. So now for every $500 that you generate, $125 is going to a co-host. So now where your costs were normally $150, you add that $125, your cost is $275 out of 500. So now when revenues drop from $500 a night on average to $300 a night on average, now your costs are still $150 plus the co-host's 25%. You're now making only roughly $75 of margin on that $300, which is about 20% of margin. Even though that's not losing money yet, what happens to a lot of owners at this point is they get scared. I have a lot of friends here in Dallas who've been hosting themselves, and now that there's been a drawdown, they don't think the money's worth it anymore. See, they've been working, making $15,000 to $17,000, $20,000 a month on a property. When that property only starts doing $9,000 or $11,000 a month instead of $15,000 to $20,000, they don't like working for that money anymore. It was better before. And this is because a lot of people tend to believe that everything should just constantly get better. People can't survive down cycles. Investors, they don't necessarily like it either. If investors have a property that's no longer performing super well on Airbnb, maybe break even, slightly profitable, or slightly not profitable, and their home price is at an all-time high, and they have a fear that the market's gonna pull back, yes, they are much more likely to sell that property. So co-hosted properties that are price inefficient because of a co-host will be the first to be considered to be sold in a down market. And so maybe this is where Reventure Consulting is right, guys, because even though we all could argue exactly what the data is and how far down the market has tumbled since the peak of the Airbnb boom, there are still people out there with grossly efficient operating systems because they have co-hosts, they have third-party housekeepers, they don't have effective revenue management, they don't understand their consumer types, so they are breaking even or worse, and they are also looking at a likelihood that home prices will deflate, even more in areas where most of the properties are short-term rentals. See, in a place like Dallas, there's tons and tons of homes on the market all the time. And so if there's an uptick of Airbnb home sales, yeah, there might be a 2%, 5% depression of listing cost, max, I would imagine. You real estate guys can argue with me on that. I'm not speaking from real estate experience, but then imagine a market like Sedona, Arizona, or Gatlinburg, Tennessee, or Lake Tahoe, or something like that, where most of the properties are Airbnbs, or just like an irresponsibly large percentage of those properties are Airbnbs because tourism has been so heavy there that it just made sense to do so. Those markets, if a vast majority of listings hit the market, prices will deflate much more aggressively than the 2 to 5% example that I'm claiming here in Dallas. And what that does is that changes the supply and demand curve. As people quit because they don't want to be in business, they wanted to be in investments first, and then other people quit out of fear because the home prices start to pull back, and then other people quit because the revenue just isn't worth the squeeze anymore. On the back end of that, we have less hosts, and we still have guests. And hopefully the hosts that stuck around are the ones who have these competencies and a passion for the industry. And then maybe Airbnb can get a good reputation again if the good hosts stick around and the bad ones quit. But guys, I need your help for context on this. I really do believe so, because as much as people are arguing their points, every market's different. So I'd like to know where you're from, and I'd like to know how your market's doing. Tell me in the comments, and I'll be down there taking some notes. Maybe we can make a video out of that. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, guys, I'll see you on the other side.